Alright ladies, welcome back to another installment of Julian's Random Projects. As promised in the last video, we're going to start to accessorize this bike. And some of the goals I've got are adding pegs, pretty straightforward. One of the interesting things about these, they fold up when they're hit, but they don't fold up and stow away. So I might take a stab at looking at the mechanism that's inside there and see if there's something that can be tweaked or something. But another interesting piece with these is that they didn't want them to get scratched rubbing up against each other, and so they wrapped one in like tissue paper, which is great. But you'd be thinking, why did they wrap both? Well, you don't need to wrap both if you've got protection between with just one, right? And so then cost savings for that when you're making about hundreds of thousands of these things is pretty substantial. And it also, maybe they have different colors. It lets them at a glance see the color in when they're pulling them from the bins. So it's always nice to see people putting some thought into cost reduction. I like that. And you might be wondering, what is that? I've since pulled the seat off and wanted to get at the battery to see what type of interconnect it had. I was really pleased to see that it had an Anderson connection versus some of these XT60s or TX60s. What are these? Yeah, XT60 is a type. It does have an XT30 in here to run the charging in, so it doesn't charge. It only charges at like a few amps, so you don't need really thick cables there. But one of the other things I did find was a 14 volt rail. So this is 14 volts to light up this LED that's in here, and that might be useful. We'll probe around and see. This might have to come apart at some point. Baby steps. Let's not break it before we've had a chance to do a full range test on this thing. I abandoned the range test and got really excited about trying to see if I could add a little bit of extra range by tweaking the controller. So that would be allowing this to discharge a little bit further or be topped off a little bit more. So we'll see what the settings are when we get in there. Yeah, some folks on the on a Reddit forum had high hopes that this extra little HiGo connector that's tucked up inside the seat and not available to the user unless they disassemble their entire seat. Some folks were hoping that this had data in it, and as best I can tell, looking at data sheets and stuff and probing these lines, this isn't ground in like a twisted pair for RS-232 or something like that. So I think that it's just a ground wire and like two sensors, or like maybe something for test at the factory so they can plug into this and then maybe like run a motor and see something. But I'll have to probe this a little bit more when it's actually like in situ and we're running the motor. The other thing that was stowed inside here was this switch. So this could be a service piece where this gets jumpered and it puts into a service mode. It could be a speed bypass. It could be an additional brake lever that was left in here. God only knows. So I'll be probing that with yield multimeter when it's plugged into the motors and everything's turned on. When I had it plugged in before, not connected to the motor or the potentiometer or the Hall effect sensor for the throttle, I wasn't getting anything from these. So I'm guessing they're probably just some sort of GPIO, and you short them and it puts it into a different mode. So we'll play around with that. Now when I opened this, it was completely potted, meaning they poured in this, God only knows, it's like, thankfully it's more like a rubber, which is nice for waterproofing, provided this doesn't like absorb water. It doesn't look like it would. But this could have also been an epoxy. That's something that I've seen board manufacturers, especially something that's going to be in the elements, they'll come in and they'll pour this with a hard epoxy, and it just completely sets in, keeps the thing free from ingress of water. And also some of these components like the capacitors, through vibrations and things, it's actually that mass is going to vibrate independently from this chassis, and so eventually you'll break the solder connections here or break a leg or have an internal failure or something. So having all that potted helps a lot with vibration. So I've been peeling back that the potting, the little rubber bits here, to try and get at some of the circuit board, and this is what we've found so far. I just want to get my little rubber spludger. If you come in here with a screwdriver or a multimeter lead or something, you're going to end up popping these little 0603 and 0805 type components that are populated on this surface mount board. They're easy to just pop right off if you come at them at just the right angle, so you want to avoid that. The first one I revealed was this motor controller over here. It's transistor type stuff, a little bit of signals here, big swings in current with these guys up top. So yeah, not a lot of smarts in there. I mean, it's a very gee-whizzy part, but that's not where we're controlling our speed and that type of stuff. That lies in the STM32 that's hiding back over here. And this is a very common part. You find these like hoverboards and the like. So there's been a lot of homebrew development around that. People tweaking stuff or taking some crappy Windows software that was written for the factory that leaked out. There's plenty of that floating around in the world. And the other thing we see is what looks to be like headers here. I don't know if those are, I think that one's ground. These other ones I probe them, they're not like floating, they're not 3 volts, which would be kind of RS-232. Usually that hangs around 3 volts for their data lines. They do like a differential pair so that you get the ones and the zeros, the little bits, the pixies dancing across the wires there. So that's got to be something. Now, they might have blown a fuse that goes between here and here in production, but I don't know how hard they're going to try and lock this down. I mean, it's a toy after all. It's someone's little commuting bike. So I'm going to pull up the data sheet on this thing and see which of these pins are the communication lines for that. And then if I can't get them to hook up here, I might solder right onto the pins here and see if I have any love that way. All right, so cut to days later. I've since popped something or put this microcontroller into some kind of funky state. God only knows. I tried dumping the firmware that was on here with no luck. So I was right. The header that you saw earlier in this video, it's SWD, which is a single wire data. And yes, you'll need the STM32 programmer clone that I mentioned earlier if you want to try and talk to this chip. So now what it's doing is when I try to connect to it with some of this the software to flash these types of chips, so not the stuff from the e-bike manufacturers, but straight from ST, I wasn't able to pull anything off, and so I started to fiddle with some of the settings. They have some write protections that are enabled, and so I disabled those and then tried to read again, and now it just halts. So as soon as I plug into it, it doesn't work. And I think what I did after reading some of the, completely, going back and doing the whole RTFM, there was a note in there that suggested that you not power this up with the DC that it's meant to run on, while also plugged in with the programmer. So I think the programmer comes in with like 3 volts. And so they're like, don't plug in the 12 or in this case, 36 volts that eventually get stepped down to probably 5 volts for here, but it didn't want it feeding in 2 ways. And I probably popped something. So that's why it's out of its housing. I've pulled a lot more of the potting off, mostly to get at the silk screening that was on the backside. Let's see if I can get this thing to focus here. My hunch earlier that this was some sort of GPIO or a service connection was sort of true in that it is RX and TX. You see the pin out here, color coding. So yellow for RX, green for TX. I tried connecting this to like a level shifting thing or like a TTL or an RS-232 adapter, and I got nothing, or at least not in the serial monitor. So this thing wasn't kicking out data words or any sort of meaningful data. Now that might have been, I don't remember my troubleshooting steps, so that might have been after I popped something or put this in a funky state, or who knows, maybe damaged. Maybe I put 12 volts on this thing. It was only supposed to have 3 volts. I don't know. I lost track. It's been weeks now. But if you haven't completely horked your board, now you know. You might be able to start with that. So you'd want to do RX and TX here, maybe find a ground somewhere else. And I reckon that folks that are deep into these e-bikes know what some of these other acronyms are for, just as a reference, so you don't have to go taking apart yours. So I would like to get this back on the road. So I went out and purchased one of these plain Jane controllers. I tried to find an exact match for this one from the manufacturer, and they don't sell onesie twosies. They sell many thousands to e-bike manufacturers, but I was hoping to find one that they're not going to reinvent the wheel for this circuit board. They're just going to adapt whatever plugs a particular bike manufacturer. Maybe they want to do pedal assist, maybe they want to do throttle, and so they might tweak that for theirs, or they might set the software to be more conservative so you get longevity. These in some cases are made by the same company. I don't know if that's the case with this one. I doubt it. I'll know more when we pull this thing apart, and we will be pulling it apart so that we can swap over some of these unique connectors that exist on the Super 73, like this YLS connector. And I don't know if there's any polarity. I think with the Hall effect, there's some sensing that's happening. Obviously, those are the 3 phases of your AC motor, and then there's some other types of phasing detecting circuitry here. Again, I'm not an expert at this stuff. I just play around with it. So I think that you can have those in any orientation. It's just as if your motor was, just orientated differently in its relationship to to the ground and the sky. So I don't know if they matter which. You wouldn't want to like swap this one with that one, but I think because they're paired up with their particular phase, I think you're okay. And so we're going to be desoldering all of these connections here, the DC in, our AC out, and I might leave all the other ones. There's like some other type of service connector here, which I think is for monitoring other voltages and things that they might want to do at the factory there, but that's stowed away inside the bike. You can't get at that normally without taking apart the seat. So, and then this other one has a sense for voltage so that you can determine whether it's low, medium, or high. It has throttle on it, the brake disconnect, so when you apply the brakes, it cuts power to the motor so you don't go burning out your brakes. Doing both, there's no reason you need to be braking and accelerating at the same time unless you're trying to do smoky burnouts. So that's in this, but I think I can just jump right and behave myself. Yeah, enough rambling. Let me pop this. Let me pop this guy open. This was going to be 2 videos, and I'll shorten it up, and we'll try and do a single video all the way through me completely horking this and hopefully back on the road.
I'll call you, Private. Sir, 5'9", sir! 5'9". I didn't know they stacked shit that high. You trying to squeeze an inch in on me somewhere? Huh? Sir, no, sir! Bullshit, it looks to me like the best part of you ran down to crack your mama's ass and ended up as a brown stain on the map for it. I think you've been cheated. Where in hell are you from anyway, Private? Sir, Texas!
All right, so if you're following along at home, or you're watching this just because you want to, I don't know, inspect yours, there's no need to take out all of these screws that hold these up against the heatsink. I'm only doing that because I figured I needed to get to the bottom of these and be able to desolder the stuff I needed. You should be able to just unscrew the top bits, the top screws for this extruded aluminum, and then pop it off and look inside, or take off both ends and then pop the top off, like I've done here. They're just keyed in place. When they make these boxes, because it's extruded like pasta comes out of a pasta maker, they can make them any length they want. They just come out and then they cut it here. Next one comes out, cut it there. So you can make it twice as long. You just skip that one cut. All right, and when you're buying these like super cheap controllers from China, if you're doing this as like a commuting bike and you care about getting stranded on the road, if it's just a toy, then don't ever open this thing up. But there's a lot of opportunities in here to beef this thing up. They've already tried to do that by thickening this trace that runs along here to keep it from getting too hot or allow it to flow more current. But there's air gaps. You could come through and flow a bit more solder and really anchor this thing down. And on this side, like right where it connects to this leg of this MOSFET, it's the thinnest part of that trace as it goes into it, and there's just a little dab of solder here. I would have liked to have seen it a little bit thicker, or this wire turn that corner and connect to the leg or something. So that's something I might do before I put all this back together. Bore you guys with the details and maybe cut to most of this wiring, some of these cables swapped over to this guy. So I'll be right back. All right, I think I got some of the wiring up and done. I'm going to temporarily set that there in case I got the polarity wrong on the throttle, but we're hijacking the old the throttle into the new motor controller, and thankfully guy Steve found me on Instagram. If you're not following me on Instagram, do that. It's what the kids are doing, and he sent me the pinout for this thing. He found the manufacturer of the original Super 73 board, and someone there agreed to send him a pinout. And you can see they're using this HiGo pin and the YLS thing for the motor connector. Pretty snazzy little one and done connector. It's a lot nicer than what came on this guy. What I didn't realize when I bought this was that it has a Bluetooth module running off to here. I'll play with that in a bit, and that it also has another one that runs to this display. So let's give it a go. I'll get this all mounted up later. It's kind of cool to have a display if that works. And at least it powers on. Oh, it's got voltage. Very nice. Meaning, well, I mean, obviously it powered on, but like it's detecting the voltage, so that's good. That's blinking. Probably good. I don't know. Let's see. I don't know what the numbers. Those I think change the different modes. I need to go in here and program this thing, but I'll play with that another time. So let's see if we can get this thing spin a thing in again. You have the throttle. Wait for it. Oh yeah. Oh, it thinks. Very nice. All right, so I've got it all buttoned up. The next step's to get it off the stand here, down on the ground, and give it a go. All right. I'll have to play around with this some more, but let's pull it down and see if we can get this thing running again. All right, well, before I break it again, I'm going to go in. I know there's a ton of settings you can do between some, Vulcan death grips button presses here with the controller or over Bluetooth, and I'll get this thing dialed in, at least to start really modest and then ramp it up. It doesn't have as much heat sinking as the stock one had, so I'm not super pleased about that, but maybe it'll be fine. I don't know. We'll give it a go. But the replacement controller was inexpensive, so worst case I pop it and then I gotta do some more soldering. So there it is. Let's cut to maybe a bit of a test drive when the sun comes up.
Well, I'm not going to leave you alone. I want you to get mad.
Hypnotized by a spreading viral syndrome, sitting silent in a cyber prison. Eyes got spinning spirals in them. We're spinning our lives, pretending, idolizing, idle singing. Work the simple-minded jerks, jerking off at the sight of women. Someone's behind it, making the most of it. Raping your soul, sonny, they've made you a slow puppet. Enslaved the globe of paper, causing karma, sick behavior. They divide you, make your fight, constantly quarrel with your neighbor. You make me wanna wake you, shout, shake you out your bed, slap your back to reality, you break your drowsy head with the black, brown, white, yellow, or blue. Whether you Jew, Christian, Muslim, man or woman, natural, feminist. Don't forget your hatred and be scale straight, relate evenly. We can blatantly see we're all getting raped equally. People should.
But I mentioned it earlier. I also added these foot pegs. They're less for the rider and more for a passenger to if they're sitting on the back side of your banana seat here, they've got a place to rest their feet so they're not dangling or getting caught up in the spokes and stuff. So that, along with pulling out the Anderson plug to be outside of the bike, is the only other mods that I've done aside from adding the stock fenders. What this is going to allow me to do is to have different battery modules like these guys. So either in some kind of a caddy here, like a water bottle type caddy, and then make this thing safe for shorts and dock it there. Nothing permanent. Maybe it's something I could swap out different chemistries, or carry an extra one of these in my backpack and then toss it in here when it's needed, or permanently mount it up under here. Give you an idea what that would kind of look like. Let's see. Of course, with a case or a cover, so you're not rocking the bare cells and getting them splashed on. But also the other thing, this is for the lulls, right? Or to play with the different battery types and charging and discharging rates, or maybe I'm charging something for solar and I want a fun way to discharge it. I can do that on the bike here. But in reality, the amount of, unless I'd go with a custom seat here and make it really soft, or this was like a daily commute. I don't know how you make this a daily commute. This is more of just a goofing off around town or going to the park or something in this thing. But in reality, if you're doubling the capacity of this battery, that's a 40-mile range. I'm not going to want to ride this thing. I don't think anyone's going to want to ride this thing for 40 miles at any given time. So it's kind of pointless to add too much capacity to this thing unless you start to goof off with higher speeds or more torque, bigger motors. Then you would need more battery power, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So just keep that in mind. We'll do one of these later in a video. We'll get this thing mounted up and play around with swapping the batteries, almost kind of like going to a reserve for a motorcycle. But it's more of a it's more of an experiment than, or a thought exercise than it is an actual needed part for this bike. So if you found this content fun, make sure that you subscribe. Apparently YouTube insists on that. And then if you want to actually know when videos are popping up, make with the clicking of the bell. Let me know in the comments, is the Super 73 either the original or this Z low-cost model, is that something you guys are considering buying? Did you build a Chinese clone of one? Let us know.